We are back and we're having an expert discussion today on the book of Revelation. I'm so excited. I have been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. And this is Dr. Adam Ayers. He has roots in the Calvary Chapel movement where he created D groups, woohoo, which kind of spread all over, including my alma mater, APU, where I was a member of a D group. And he used to have a radio show called Interface Radio on KFSG. He has his PhD from Fuller, and he specializes in hermeneutics.
Missiological hermeneutics.
Missiological hermeneutics, which I'm not an expert on. He's a pastor emeritus at Faith Worship Community. He's the founder of Stoa Foundation. And he taught at a few Christian colleges, not only APU, my alma mater, but also Vanguard. And wasn't there one
Fuller?
more? Yeah, taught at Fuller. And wrote some books, including Kingdom in Context. And now does ministry alongside his awesome wife, Wendy, yay, who's giving beautiful vibes from off camera, on Kauai, where he pastors some of my good friends. And they run a ministry called Built Deep. You can check it out at builtdeep.org. So I have a few questions about Revelation that I'd love to get your thoughts on.
A few questions.
I mean, that book is a question maker.
Yeah.
So first, how do you read the book of Revelation? There's certain books like 4 Views on Revelation. There's other people that talk about other views in addition to those 4. When you approach the book, what lens are you looking through personally?
That was me speaking in tongues. I do missiological hermeneutics, so my approach is a little bit different. Missiological hermeneutics asks, what is the text doing rather than what it's saying? So it's a big shift because we tend to focus on content, right? And when we do content reading, we miss what's happening. So missiological hermeneutics says, what is the Bible doing? What is the Bible doing here? So when I approach it, I'm looking for what is it doing. But that requires a number of different aspects to it. So I kind of alternate between what's called reader response criticism or aesthetic criticism and historical critical method, which is kind of your classic backgrounds type stuff, and literary method. So I vary between those 3, kind of alternating, looking for literary cues, genre, all that kind of stuff, as well as functional cues, like what is taking place here. And when that happens, it's kind of like the difference between describing what a pair of pliers is made out of and taking into account what the pliers are for. So when I look at it at the bottom line, I look for the text as a product of mission. So there was a mission that brought the text into existence, as a ground of mission. So what are the truths there that give rise to having purpose in life? And as a tool within mission. So how do you use it? So does it make sense?
So why did John write Revelation?
That's the big question, isn't it? So the why of the Revelation really comes out when you look at the letters. And kind of at the very beginning, where he talks about enduring persecution. And over and over again, you get that motif of he who overcomes, he who overcomes, he who overcomes. So the function of the revelation, and we think of it, is to tell us the future. No, that's not what it's for. What it's for is to strengthen people so that they can endure things and not lose their faith in Christ, not be compromised by their encounters with the world, all the different aspects of the world, and particularly the obstacles and antagonists to faith in a most reduced way.
And it's kind of cool that it's applicable to lots of other Christians besides the initial hearers of the letters, because all of us find ourselves to some degree or another in that struggle to stay strong till the end in our faith. So he's writing to these churches. Tell us what else you see as like a main takeaway or a main theme in the book.
Well, the other functions, like on literary levels, other functions are the revelator is trying to integrate these strands of Jewish tradition. There's so much material in there that's Old Testament stuff, that's apocryphal stuff, all these strands, these discourses of Jewish thought, cosmology. What's the Jewish view of the universe, life, the universe, and everything? And how does that work? It's like trying to put a Ford motor and a Toyota transmission together, right? So how do you get the Christian worldview and the Jewish worldview? Because Jesus's Olivet discourses are quite a bit different than some of the prophetic discourses that you hear in the Old Testament. So how do you lead those? What do you do with the temple? What is the temple? Do we just throw away the temple? We throw away Judaism, or is there a mix where they can function together? It's like Hebrews that way. So it picks up all these strands. So that's one of the big agenda that's going on there. The other is to, within that integrated cosmology, to recognize and place Christ at the very height and the center of all of cosmic history and human history. Those are the big agenda.
Yeah, I could see that. Mm-hmm. And it's really cool.
It's neat.
So the thing I'm the most horrible at, probably, there are several candidates, is the history, like knowing. I've heard it a million times. I learned it in college. I just suck at history. The intertestamental period before the New Testament, how all these different factions were happening and all these different groups were influencing all these other groups. And it's all the stuff you're amazing at. So could you tell us a little bit of what is happening historically leading up to the writing of the book?
Yeah, it's a little bit like trying to put the ocean in a teacup.
I know, sorry.
That's okay. Well, part of the problem is when you date the book. It's like, so if you have a conservative dating or a non-conservative dating, whatever it might be. What's happened under the Roman emperors, Claudius, Trajan, Domitian, has been an increasing persecution of Christians as they come to realize that Christians are a little bit distinct from Jews. At first, they were thought of as being sort of agitating Jews, and the disruptions that were taking place between Christians and Jews within that were being seen as agitations out into the Roman society, partly because that was part of the Jewish agenda, to say these guys are troublemakers. So they kept saying these guys are troublemakers, and the Romans saw them all as troublemakers. And so there's some pushdowns. So the Christians are getting it from the Jews on the one side, and then from the Romans on the other. And they're having, especially those who are in the Jewish traditions, they're having kind of flashbacks to the Seleucids. Because before the whole Roman thing, when Alexander's empire went kablooey, when he died and left it to his generals and they all started infighting, the area, Palestinian area, is sort of like the Panama Canal of that region. So if you're going from the area of Syria, like in Tigris, Euphrates, the Mesopotamian Valley, if you're heading down to Egypt, which is the breadbasket of everything, all the rest of the stuff is sand. You got to go through that little area where there's water, and that's where Palestine is. So that's like the Panama Canal when you're traveling by animals. And so the Seleucids have Syria and Anatolia and all that stuff. And the Ptolemies, that's like Cleopatra and her crew. They have Egypt, okay? And they keep fighting. And the Ptolemies are like, ciao. They're the empire. It's like the French Empire. It's a little bit cool. And like, who'd you rather be under, the Russian Empire or the French Empire? It's like, I'll take those. They're the nice guys. The Seleucids are the mean guys, and the Ptolemies are the nice guys. And they keep fighting back and forth. Well, eventually, the Seleucids are stronger. But they're really into Greek culture, and they outlaw Jewish practices, because the Jews keep sympathizing with the Ptolemies, right? And so Antiochus Epiphanes IV, he ends up, after some civil strife there, it's not really clear what happened, but he ends up saying, no circumcision, no reading of the law, no practice in the temple, and we're going to rededicate the temple as a temple to Zeus, and he offers pigs on it.
And what year does that take place, or what?
That is 167 BCE is when he defiles it, I believe.
So the conservative dating of the Book of Revelation is like 90 AD, right? And then the other opinion would be after 167?
Late 200s.
Okay. Do you have personal thoughts on that you want to share? Or?
Yeah. Or late 2nd century, rather, early 200s. This is one of those things where authorship and dating, all of the evidence points both ways. So one of the things about apocalyptic literature is that with apocalyptic literature, you're supposed to use a pseudonym. That's part of it's just the genre. It's the way it works. A little bit like Conan Doyle writing about Sherlock Holmes, you've got to have it through the voice of Watson.
Right.
So today it's like doing a commentary dressed in a stovepipe hat and a big frock coat. You have to put on this character in order to have this viewpoint, in order to speak to this location. It's a social location. And so you're supposed to take on the persona. It's totally acceptable in those days. Take on the persona. Like, we wouldn't say that somebody's actually faking themselves to be Abraham Lincoln if they did that. We would say, oh, that's spoken from the location of Abraham Lincoln in order to make a commentary on society. You're supposed to take on the persona of a patriarch in order to write apocalyptic. Well, there aren't that many Christian patriarchs. So John's a big gun. And John is someone who would be the patriarch that someone would take on to do that. But John is also, if it's really him, he's not going to write in somebody else's name. So an early date would say it's really John because he claims to be John. A later date would say it's John because it's taking on the apocalyptic genre. And you're kind of caught. If it really is John with a vision, this is how he would write. If it's not John and you're simply writing in an apocalyptic style, that's still who you're going to be. So all the data, when you begin to look at that, goes both ways. There's no... My personal... I think it was John. But that's just my feel for it.
For me, I always, if I'm giving a personal opinion, which I try to refrain from most of the time on this topic, I think it could have really been John. I think that's a distinct possibility.
It feels like John, doesn't it?
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, we're going to know one day.
Yeah. It's just like you read the Johannine letters and you read the Gospel of John, there's something that's so nuanced about a literary voice, but it's there. And there'd be a lot of Hebraisms in it if he's dealing with Old Testament literature, and if he's by himself on an island and doesn't have a scribe, if he doesn't have an amanuensis, his Jewish backgrounds are going to come out. And if he's writing in a particularly Jewish literary form. So you got to take all those into account. Those aren't necessarily...
But he would have been old. He would have been...
Mm-hmm. He'd have been old.
Yeah. And been through a lot. And still writing this amazing... like on just an intellectual level, like
it's
the
stunning.
stuff he's tying in together in such beautiful ways.
And he doesn't have a copy of the Old Testament with him.
Up here,
yeah,
I know.
it's just all there. All those themes.
What?
Yeah, it's a symphony.
The Bible's cool. Okay, so how would you outline the book? You'd say there's letters.
Yeah.
Then
there's the problem. Okay, apocalyptic tends to defy outlining. Intentionally, because it's a little bit like asking, how do you locate a quantum particle for time, or for place and direction and speed at the same time, right? As soon as you do that, it breaks down. And apocalyptic is designed to have this element of mystery in it, so it shifts on you. There's a literary theorist named Wolfgang Iser who talks about this, how and not particularly about the Revelation, but how in literature, the reader has to anticipate and then correct and reflect back. And so the text always changes as the reader progresses through it, right? Apocalyptic plays on this and makes it even more so. So what it does is it intentionally makes mysteries. Have you read Lord of the Rings?
I mean, I've seen it, but I haven't read the whole thing.
Anybody who's a Lord of the Rings geek is like, who's Tom Bombadil? Because
I barely know who that is.
He's one of those characters that waltzes across the scene of the plot of the text and has all these mysteries around him. Like, he comes in singing, he's this like cosmic level character and you don't know who he is. Purposefully. Yes. Like Lewis. He does it in Paralandra too. Puts these things across. So what the book does, the book is a collage, like a music video, of all these images that violate a linear development. And as such, they don't outline very well. There's letters. So I would say there's an earthly located with a heavenly message. And then it flips and it's a heavenly location with earthly implications. So those are too big. You could also break it up by the numbered things. That's what most people do. The seals, the woes, the trumpets, right? Each of those breaks open mid-count.
I know, they don't finish. It's like,
No.
When I read Revelation, it's actually very familiar and comforting to me in a way, because it is like having a conversation with someone who's really smart and has ADHD, which is my people. These are my people. I love having conversations with people who are intellectually gifted and have ADHD. That's most of my friends. And I don't know if this is like arrogant, but I'd probably technically put myself in that category, because even though I'm self-diagnosed, that's the way my brain works. It doesn't really finish because it gets so excited about the next thing that's inside of that thing. And like right now, we're going through chapter 9, so we're into the end-ish of the trumpets. It's not, you don't get to the 7th trumpet because he has to say all this other stuff after the 6th trumpet for like 2 or 3 more chapters. Then you see the little like, oh, footnote, there was a 7th trumpet. And then boom, it goes into the next thing. And you're like, okay, this is literally, I don't know if John had ADHD, but the genre lends itself well to people like me, because it's not really important for me to do anything linearly. It's important that I shove in as much creativity and context and beauty and tie as many things together as I can. That's how I would create too. Yes. I wrote the book.
Yeah. Some people cook by recipes, and some people are like, and we'll just throw some stuff in here.
Recipes, I cannot. I cannot.
And that's John.
Yeah.
That's John. So it defies that kind of, it's like saying give an outline of James Joyce's Ulysses. Okay. It's not going to happen, because the point of it is this rolling stream of consciousness thing. And that's, if you're having visionary stuff or describing visionary stuff, even if there are things that you're trying to reference, it's still going to follow that rolling, confusing, deliberately chaotic, transcendent sort of imagery, like Lewis Carroll.
Well, it's like a fever dream that changes your life because it means something.
Yes.
I don't know. Anyway, yes.
But that was like the Alice in Wonderland thing, or the Jabberwocky thing, right? Yeah. It's supposed to be disruptive.
Yeah.
On some hand, while it's teaching truth on the other.
Well, yeah, because I mean, these things, the topics at hand are not neatly digestible. They're not something you can grasp intellectually. This is spiritual stuff. This is heaven and angels and demons and the end of the world. You're not going to be able to put it in a textbook style like A, B, C, D, E. Yeah. So
point 2B,
right?
The beast and the whore of Babylon. Okay, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, but I do think in like the modern North American majority culture has kind of tried to shove it into this way of understanding, and it's kind of weird. I mean, I'm unpacking. I grew up thinking it was more linear than it probably is, and now I'm like deconstructing that as I'm actually studying the book.
Yeah, it's more cyclic. Ask the question, what about Jesus and corrupt religion? What about Jesus and socio-political power? What about Jesus and socioeconomic power? What about Jesus and spiritual opposition? What about the whole cosmic issue? And so each time you answer one, and then they end with a chorus, because it's also a musical, right? They end with a chorus, and then they open to the new scene. And it's a non-linear, it's not temporal in that sense. It's not directly temporal, because you're popping in and out of these views backward and views forward. Yeah,
and I think there's a temptation as a human. What is going to happen in my future or in the future of history? I would like to know that. Everyone would like to know that. The temptation is strong to like go extrapolate what you want to learn from the book versus I'm trying to just approach the book as okay, what is it saying? And what priorities am I finding in here instead of bringing my own priorities to the conversation, I guess.
Yeah.
It's hard.
To be fair, we're fighting our own socialization. As Americans, I mean, the U.S. has sentenced every child to the same childhood. Okay? That is, you will grow up in school and you will read through textbooks. And that shapes how we understand knowledge. We don't have much room for knowledge that is not textbook styled. We don't recognize it as knowledge. We recognize it, or we see it as fiction or art or something else. We don't recognize it as true knowledge. And so, yeah, we approach it and we keep wanting it to become a textbook, and particularly a predictive textbook.
I was even trying to explain that concept on the topic of stars that are angelic entities or beings. Mm-hmm. That was not a foreign concept to the original readers, because in Ophelia, like Second Temple, all that stuff, they always talked about the stars as angels and whatnot. So now, coming from our context, reading that the stars equal angels, how do we look at that? I mean, do we just think that they were dumb and they didn't know? Or is there value in their cosmic view, like you were saying? And how do we learn from them?
Yeah.
Instead of dismiss them?
Yeah. We have an overdeveloped sense of our own intellectual superiority. I think it's ironic. We say, "Oh, stars are angels," and they're just naive, and that is a tradition of that in historical critical method, and it's misguided and it's misinformed because they're not that naive. They have the same skepticisms around Christ, even as disciples do, right? As contemporary Westerners would. Don't forget the Greeks invented science, okay, through their logic. But the irony is, what do we call celebrities now?
Yeah. Star always means
we have no problem calling
an
people
elevated
stars.
or powerful being. Yeah.
So it's like, and planetes means wanderer, right? So of course there's those metaphors. At the very beginning of the book, it talks and it says, and the churches are lampstands. So get this right: the churches are lampstands, and the spirits before God's throne are stars. Okay, we're using metaphors here, people. You know?
Obviously,
here's your little legend with all the little. This equals that.
So, talk to us about metaphors and avatars and like stage names, almost.
Yeah.
What names?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Pseudonyms.
Pseudonyms. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to us about that.
Okay. We do this in math. We use placeholders. We use placeholders in order to understand situations that we can't physically manipulate or create. And to see, we reduce things to placeholders in order to see relationships between them, right? That's the big thing. A squared times B squared equals C squared. We're trying to look past the quantities and see the relationships. When you're doing that, you're doing metaphor, because metaphor takes one thing and another thing and places them in a relationship so that a meaning will arise between them. The meaning is the relationship. It works to use figures so that you can see that when you reduce all of an entity like the church, you reduce all that is the church. There's tons of stuff that the church is, but when you reduce it down to say it's a bride, now you can see something about the church that you don't see, and you can, in essence, manipulate the church around in an equation and see truths about it that you wouldn't see if you're trying to take all of the church into account. So it's a little bit like doing a political cartoon. You can see things when you reduce these to figures that you can't see otherwise. And that's what the Revelation does.
So what are some prominent avatars and metaphors in the book?
Well, probably the biggest one is the lamb. Because seeing Jesus as a lamb, with 7 horns and 7 eyes, that's just a creepy picture of Jesus, okay? Unless you think of it as the lamb he's innocent, he's a sacrifice, because he's a lamb slain. That's also a creepy picture. But he has horns, which is mature, right? And 7 eyes, he sees everything. So when you recognize that, okay, that's the avatar of Jesus. It's the picture. The Son of Man imagery of the white hair and the sword out of the mouth and the flaming eyes, that's also an avatar. Not in the sense of an avatar like people will think of, epiphanies, like the Dalai Lama as an avatar. Not that sense, but more like in the sense of on your phone, there's a little anime of you. And that's what's moved around in the equation. So he who sits on the throne is an avatar. God doesn't, in the sense of a representative icon,
right?
Iconography. God doesn't sit on a chair. He doesn't need a chair because there is no gravity, right? He is gravity. So it's a very artificial view. The beast is one. The whore is one. The city. Each time a city is mentioned, it's pretty much an avatar. Makes sense. So Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem, the Babylon, each of those are avatars that represent things. Yeah.
Well, okay. So right now I'm reading chapter 9.
Uh-huh.
The fifth trumpet and the sixth trumpet are a lot alike in that there's this kind of evil army released. These plagues / armies / judgments that get released throughout the book. How are we to think about those? Just take it wherever you want.
Okay. Well, in the first section, like with the horsemen and stuff like that, all up until really about chapter 9, think of it like, do you remember the Cold War? Remember the Cold War? I mean,
sort of.
Okay, I'm definitely a Cold War child. The Soviets used to put on the May Day parade. The May Day parade was a celebration of the revolution, and what they would do is they would, march through the streets of Moscow, and they would have on trailers these massive ICBMs and all of their military might on parade. Right? What are they doing? Are they going to war? No. They're showing you the arsenal to intimidate. And the first part, the horsemen, the cries of the blood for justice, of the martyrs, those things. This is the arsenal. It's putting out all the instruments of destruction on the table. And then it ramps up each time they're revisited. They ramp up in readiness. DEFCON 1, DEFCON 2, DEFCON 3, and finally the red button gets pushed. So you get these repeating things. One of the big weapons is release the Kraken, right? So to allow the one who fell from heaven to release
the abyss, the bottomless pit thing. Yeah.
Like all the creepies that have been stuck in there.
That definitely feels like, oh, now it's, whoa.
Mm-hmm. It's like biowarfare.
And this is why a lot of people think, oh, the Christians must be gone right before this. But I don't know. That doesn't seem like the main theme in the text. Like, how do we know that for sure? I don't think we do. But I see where people get it. Because they've got things that affect the whole globe physically. And then Trumpet 5, there's a little bit of a shift there that it's more of like a spiritual warfare situation at that point. But also the plague that kills a third of mankind. So isn't that still physical? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
don't forget, it also says, to the angels who are given power over the earth to hurt the things of it, don't hurt anybody till we mark the ones.
Right.
And because everybody gets a mark. In the book of the Revelation, everybody gets a mark. Yeah. It doesn't matter which side you're on, you're going to get a mark. So they have to mark all the ones who are of the Lord. Why? And if you think about the scorpions that are come, they're not allowed to hurt the ones who believe in the Lord. So it's artificial to say all the real Christians got pulled out and these are the ones who converted in the middle of it. There's nothing like that in there. Yeah. It's an importation.
So, okay, I was listening to your home Bible study recordings from when y'all went through Revelation, and in chapter 10. You mentioned something about where the small seal that John was disallowed to write down, when they're like, don't write this part down, being the description of the end commencing. Mm-hmm. That before this, the seals and the horsemen and the stuff, they're metaphors about the general constant state of the world, but maybe like after this, or this seal that he's not allowed to describe in the book of Revelation is somehow like it signifies the beginning of the end. Mm-hmm. This unwritten down part. So how does this view compare to other views? Like, does everyone hold that view?
No.
Okay. Do you ascribe to any of these view labels?
I don't.
Yeah.
That's why I work so hard to be able to say, look, this is what I read.
Yeah.
I think that section has been unfortunately overlooked. When it's just right there. It's just right there that one of the things, sorry for stopping mid thought.
It's very appropriate.
Okay. Yeah, it's very Johannine. In 119, so there's a cue there in 119 where he says, I'm going to show you write the things that you have seen that are and which will shortly come to take place. That's a big cue. And that tells us, and that's right out at the beginning, that's the first commission to write stuff. Things that you have seen, things that are, and things that will shortly come to pass. So that tells us the book is not just about what's going to come to pass. It's about the things that are and the things that John has seen, or the Revelator has seen. What is it that you've already observed? Got it? Because he hasn't seen much by the time that commission is given to him. He hasn't had the visions yet. But talk about the things you have seen, the things that are, and the things that will come. So that's a big part. The angel and the thunders in 10, with that last trumpet, suddenly there's 7 thunders. Everything is very familiar about how the world works up until that point. But right then, 7 thunders utter their voice, and I was about to write it down, and it's supposed to be sealed up. But that's when the angel with his foot on the land and sea says, now, and it says he swears by him who sits on the throne. He finally says, now there will not be delay, and now it's going to end. After those 7 thunders. So, and John's like, well, then I better get that down what those 7 thunders say, because it's after those that he says, now's the end. Now there's no more delay. So those mark the end of delay. Up until then, it's all delay, which signals to us these are the dynamics, the setup of what informs the end. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But then he wasn't allowed to write it down,
no,
so.
Which keeps it a mystery.
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing that Jesus says over and over again. You are not going to be able to nail this down.
Yeah. Even I don't really know the hour.
Yeah, when Jesus goes, I don't know. Yeah.
That's rare. That's a little bit rare. I don't know if he said that too much.
Yeah.
I have a random question about Ezekiel, because of course that's very related to Revelation. I could be totally wrong about this and getting stuck on something that doesn't matter that much. But when you see the cherubim in Ezekiel's vision in the Old Testament,
yes,
you are looking up through a glassy type thing to some cherubim into a throne room. Yep. And then in Revelation, John is looking down at a sea of glass type thing and straight forward at a throne room and cherubim.
Yep.
So is he doing that on purpose? Is he saying, okay, I've actually seen it a little bit clearer because it's Jesus and like this is now more complete? I see what you're saying. Or am I imagining that?
No, I think it's more pedantic than that. Exodus 25. Okay, the elders go up to see God in Sinai. Right. Lots of theological issues there. Yeah. But it says they see him, and under his feet is a pavement like sapphire. Okay. Clear.
Right.
Now, the heavens are God's footstool.
Okay.
And the firmament is his handiwork, right? The heavens are his footstool. What that is, it's a picture of Yahweh with his feet on the sky. Okay, so that's the firmament, right? The heavens above heavens, and it's the heavens are under his feet. So that's the atmosphere. When you see that in the Revelation, it's there again because it's part of the throne room imagery. That's the Yahweh's throne room. In Ezekiel, here's the thing: he's by the river Kibar, and what's coming to him is what's called a Merkabah, right? It's a chariot. It's a divine chariot. Think of it like a litter. Okay, in Isaiah 5, the seraphs, the creatures, are there around this throne, and they're the divine thugs, incredible beings. When it arrives in Ezekiel, they're bearing it like an emperor on a litter.
Oh.
Got it? It's a chariot. It's not the throne room. It's the portable. So it's coming as a litter. And so the sky is above them because that's where his feet are resting. And the beings are underneath it, carrying it. Oh, got it?
Yep.
And that's why there's wheels. Yep. There's no wheels in the throne room thing. And those wheels are all full of eyes.
So would you say those are the same thugs?
Yeah, they're the same thugs.
Okay.
And their spirit is, well, Yeah, the same imagery of calf and eagle,
Cherubim.
cherubim. So
Okay.
make sense?
Yes. I could not find the answer to that. So thank you.
Oh yeah, it's fun.
Cool.
It's beautiful stuff. It's just so neat.
I need to correct myself on something, probably, maybe. In a previous episode, which was my summary episode on Revelation, I told listeners that Armageddon is a plain in northern Israel. And battles used to be fought there.
Yeah.
And that in chapter 16, the battle is it named after Armageddon, or is that a misconception?
Okay. Yeah. The valley is the valley of Jezreel.
Okay.
Okay. You can, and whenever you read Kings and Chronicles, that just comes up there, because that's, if Palestine is Panama, the valley of Jezreel is the canal itself. There's only one valley you can travel an army through. That's it. So that's always the strategic point, Valley of Jezreel. Nickname is, well, there's a town actually there, settlement. It's got centuries. It's a tell, which is kind of a mound now of habitation there, because it's a fruitful thing. Mount Carmel's up above, over on the side. So this valley is strategically important. Here's the trouble. It's the valley of Megiddo.
Oh.
The valley of Jezreel. But Har-Megiddon, right? Armageddon means the mountain of Megiddo.
Right. I think I've heard Michael Heiser talk about this.
Oh, cool. Megiddo means slaughter.
Okay.
Okay. So it's the mountain of slaughter.
So he might be tying it back into it.
Yeah.
But he's changing it slightly?
Well, I would say you're not off. You're not off. And traditional scholarship associates Armageddon with that valley, the valley of Jezreel and Megiddo. But it's the valley of Megiddo, not the mountain. So many battles were fought there. I mean, dozens and dozens of world history changing battles were fought there. I mean, that's where Ahab dies. That's where, right? All these battles are fought right there. It's a little bit like in their common vernacular, it's a little bit like saying, and pardon, it's really offensive to say, but it's like saying Hiroshima. That embodies overwhelming destruction to us. Or saying Waterloo. That's Waterloo. And so they were all called to Waterloo. Well, Waterloo doesn't have to be the place of Waterloo. Waterloo is the concept of Waterloo.
Got it.
So I wouldn't say that you need correcting by citing that. That's an appropriate citation. Many scholars cite that.
Okay. But I should look more into the etymology, because it's mountain versus valley.
Yeah. It's just, it's not a big deal.
I'm also confused about the terminology, the day of the Lord, and the terminology, the eschaton / the end times.
Okay.
And this is probably a beginner question, but also the terminology, the Great Tribulation. Are these general terms? Are these separate specific things? How should I look at these terms?
Yeah. One at a time.
Yeah, let's talk about Day of the Lord.
Okay, Day of the Lord. The Day of the Lord discourses throughout all the Old Testament. That's really an Old Testament concept, the Day of Yahweh. The Day of Yahweh is the day in which he exerts himself as the judge. So the Day of Yahweh is, when will the Day of Yahweh come? When will everyone acts like Yahweh doesn't see. When will the day of Yahweh come? And so the prophets talk about the day of Yahweh, and a lot of times, like they'll say, it's not a pretty time. Don't wish for the day of Yahweh, because that's when everybody burns. Okay, this is not just your happy friend showing up to rescue you.
Is it Day of Yahweh, aka Judgment Day, or not exactly? Or is Judgment Day just a popular term that no one really knows the history of?
Well, Judgment Day, yes. But it's almost like when John says, and as you've heard, the Antichrist shall come, and even whereby we know is the last time. Even now, there are many Antichrists, whereby we know is the last time. Okay, so there's the idea of capital A Antichrist and little case Antichrist. In the same way, Day of the Lord. There are lots of days of the Lord, but there's the idea that behind that is a massive reset. So in other words, he does localized interventions in a day of the Lord sense among nations and peoples, and yet there is a great day of the Lord.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
and is that right after the Great Tribulation?
The Great Tribulation is, oh boy, this is how we make everybody mad. The Great Tribulation is only mentioned really once. Thlipsis is a trial. So they've come through the Great Trial. What does it mean to come through the Great Trial? It's never defined except those, who are those in white? These are those who have come through the Great Trial and have washed their robes white in the blood of the Lamb. What is the Great Trial? Apparently, the Great Trial could be life. It could be making it through to the end as a Christian. That's the Great Trial. This is the big test.
Mm-hmm. Under that type of persecution.
Yes.
Yeah. There's several words for trial
there's
or tribulation.
Tribulation. I think it's thlipsis. I think it's troubles. Trouble as opposed to pirazo, which is test. But when it says temptation, it uses pirazo. It's like a tempting thing.
Okay. It's all coming back to me now.
Yep. The Great Trial could be the troubles that are put on Christians by oppressive powers. It could be life itself, making it through to the end. Because it's always in all the letters, it's he who overcomes, he who overcomes. Who are these people who are dressed in white, rejoicing? They're the ones who overcame. There's no mention of a time period or an event that is called the Great Tribulation.
Got it. So people make a big deal about the phrase Great Tribulation, even though it shows up one time, and it could mean something pretty general. Okay, cool. I like it.
Yeah.
Day of the Lord, Great Tribulation, eschaton means the end. Mm-hmm. So that is the day of the Lord, pretty much. Or
yeah, the eschaton is the end of all things. That would be the new heaven, the new earth.
Oh, so it's like after the judgment, after the day of the Lord.
Yeah, the eschaton is, eschaton is the curtain falling.
Okay,
but it could also involve
the end state, the garden restored end state of things. Oh, cool. Well,
but it's also talked about eschatology. The eschaton is because there's no way to define how big an event is. So it
includes gnarly stuff before that.
Yeah, the gnarly stuff. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That is very, very, very helpful.
So it's both. It's both and, yeah.
Okay.
It's the curtain call and the falling action to the curtain.
Yes.
Makes sense.
I look forward to that when things are great and perfect.
Yeah. The big reset is going to be so nice.
Wow.
Yeah. Imagine, isn't it going to be nice not to have to strain? Mm-hmm. It's just not to have to be vigilant in that sense. Mm-hmm. To be able to shut down the radar.
Yeah. And I think about all the people I know in my life who have developed hypervigilance because in this world they have not always been safe and stuff.
Yeah.
That even that feeling of hypervigilance or even having to look out for yourself like that will be lifted off of you.
Yes.
And you'll just be at peace and rest.
Yes.
And it says even now, make every effort to enter into his rest because that kingdom of heaven stuff is available to us even right now, even though we're in the middle of the gnarly warfare that's described.
Can I comment on that? This is I believe is one of the greatest violations of the book of Revelation. Because the book of Revelation is designed and used, it's created to support you to be able to make it through to the end. It's there to allay your fears. It's there to grant you confidence. Note that in the Revelation, the saints have no role. They're just the chorus. They're like, do it, man. Yay. Go. You go. You do it. That's all the saints do is.
Yeah, you're worthy.
Hey. You're worthy. We rejoice. We're cheerleaders. We're not in the game in that sense. Our only job is to endure, right? But in our overdeveloped sense of human agency, people go into the Revelation and then they look for things to cue history and they become alarmists. And in doing so, they invert the purpose of the book. The book is not there to alarm us. The book is there to calm us and grant us assurance. So if you hear, this is just what I'm saying as a missiological interpreter. If you hear alarmism in reference or coming from the revelation, that is a misinterpretation right off the bat, because it is a misuse, which I would say is an abuse of the text. It is not there to alarm us. It is there to grant us the confidence. Christ has it all. He's the victor. It doesn't matter what you throw against him. It all fails at Christ.
Mm-hmm. And if we look at the author as literally John, this guy went through a lot before he wrote this. They tried to kill him. You know, it's not like he's writing about persecution from like some removed, intellectual only state.
They got his brother right off the bat.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and he's in jail writing this on an island, suffering, probably. And yet the tone is like, you guys, I saw the Lord, and every being was worshiping him, and there was light, and they were just like, holy, holy, holy. And I was like, and then, and he's just talking about like, because when you receive revelation of who Jesus is, it radically reframes any and every suffering you're going through, because ultimately, and this is what Paul talks about too, this is like light and momentary compared to that glory that John saw and wrote about in the book, and that the followers of Christ, that's our hope. Like, we don't get a lot of reassurance that things are going to be easy or always work out well here. We can pray for that. It happens a lot. We can ask for it. But we don't get guaranteed no harm here. What we get guaranteed is that that is not going to affect you forever. And it's not going to take you out in the way that it wants to, because ultimately the sting of death's been removed, and we get to be with the Lord forever in victory and be completely healed and whole and untriggerable and unanxious and happy and joyful and reunited with our God like it was always supposed to be.
Amen.
So that's exciting.
Yeah. See, you've read the Revelation.
I've been reading it for the past year.
That's it. That is what it creates in us.
But obviously I'm only getting started.
Yeah.
It's so rich.
So robust. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. And the pictures at the end are like, can't wait for that.
Yeah.
So fun.
I feel so blessed that you took time. Seriously. Thank you.
Total joy. Bible geeking.
Yes. Every day.
That's it. Awesome.